Hi, this is attorney Nicole Christie from the Christie Law Firm, where we work hard to make families stronger. So I want to talk to you about just my thoughts really around what happens when a 16-year-old is beyond your control. I am finding that there is this increase. It's probably always existed, and maybe it is just coming out to the forefront, or maybe it's an increase. But what I'm seeing is, parents who have teenagers, sometimes 16 years old, sometimes even younger, who are literally beyond their control. For example, the child's refusing to go to school. Maybe they have a mental health issue, but they won't go to counseling, won't even get in a car. And it's difficult, and there are these tug of wars that are happening with these 16-year-olds. And then the question becomes, what do I do with them? How do I discipline them? How do I make them do what I need them to do? And this isn't an issue around control. This is around discipline and maybe safety for the 16-year-old. Maybe they're engaging in at-risk behaviors. Maybe they're getting onto sites and connecting with questionable people. And so I just wanted to really talk about at least some laws around 16 and 17-year-olds and how it can impact you, and then maybe just give you some thoughts about things that I've seen perhaps work, or just making you know that you're not the only one. If you don't get anything out of this video, just know that you're not the only one. And so for specifically in the state of Connecticut, for 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, if they decide to, quote, run away, if they decide to hang out with a friend that you don't like, maybe they're hanging out with their girlfriend's parents who seem to not care that he's staying at their house indefinitely, you can't call the police and have him physically come back to you. The law allows for that 16-year-old to be able to make that decision. Mind you, they're not legal adults, but the law won't have a police officer go get them. However, if they're younger, and say they're staying, maybe they're 13 and they're staying at a house, and this person is making it difficult for you to go get custody back of your child, you can try to call the police and ask for or press charges around custodial interference. So if you know that there's someone, and this is not, between mom and dad, sometimes that can happen, but I'm not addressing that particular topic. Is really when the 13-year-old is beyond your control, living at a house that they shouldn't be at, and you want to get them back. Sometimes leverage can be used by trying to charge that adult who's in the house, who's not helping any, with custodial interference. But nevertheless, when they're 16 or 17 years old, it's very difficult, because now they're not legal adults, but they're also old enough to make certain decisions. And so what I would encourage you to do is just be educated about specifically what you can and cannot do with that 16-year-old, but also keep in mind, if that 16-year-old should take your car and get into an accident, you're still liable. So keep that in mind. It might mean that you take out some extra insurances. It might mean you maybe take out extra insurances on them. Anything to be able to try to cover any issues that they might get into until they are legally adults. Once they're 18, they're on their own. You are no longer responsible. Again, still, if they take your car and you have knowledge of that and you don't report it stolen, that could be an issue for you. So keep all of those things in mind. It's really when they're 18 years old do you see a big difference between responsibility. In the meantime, don't be afraid to reach out for help. There might be community resources available to you that your child may connect with. In our state, we have a number called 211. And you can use 211 to access a lot of community resources, everything from mental health intervention to even information about a shelter if you should ever need one. But accessing 211, so you can call them for mobile crisis, and maybe your 16-year-old or your child is really beyond your control physically. Their mental health is deteriorating to the point where you can't control them. you can contact 211 and ask for mobile crisis to come out. I find that much better than trying to call the police, because if the police officer who shows up is not well versed in mental health and how to address people who are going through perhaps a psychotic episode, or people who are having a difficult time, that could escalate to a situation that you may not want. But mobile crisis is designed specifically for that. They exist throughout the state under different umbrellas or different entities that are providing the service, but know that they do exist. And it may be that you might have to consider the police. No one wants to do that. No one wants to call the police on their own child or call the police on anyone they love. But if it's getting to a point where everybody in the house is at risk, you're going to need to do something more than hope that it gets better. And so these are very tough decisions. I don't say this lightly at all, but trying to get to the root of what's happening with your 16-year-old may take time. And it may be that things are escalating far faster than the time it's going to take to try to figure out what's going to work for them. So I would say most of all, try to keep yourself safe, try to keep the 16-year-old safe, and if the decision has to be made that the safety now comes ahead of trying to be understanding, trying to work it through, try to choose safety first, because if someone gets hurt, if other kids get hurt, it can truly impact your family in the long haul. So again, while dealing with teenagers, in general, they can be tough. We were tough as teenagers, but when you factor in things like mental health and you factor in, issues around substance abuse, I've seen that come up. I've seen where families are struggling trying to figure out if the person is using. We had that within our own family, and I had a relative, and I simply looked at him and said, I'm going to go to the store and go get the home test. You can save me the money and tell me whether it's going to be positive or not. And because they knew I was dead serious about it, they told me, and they were open with me about their use. And at least it's the first step towards trying to get them help. Some kids, you might need to do the test. Don't just take their word for it. It's too easy to get access to things. It's too easy to, they don't have to buy it themselves. They could have friends. They could have different people who give them access. But the more information you know about what's happening with your teenager, is the better off it will be. The better you can try to find the resources that are necessary, the better it will be to try to figure out, what can I do to make this better for my family, for my child. So keeping all of those things in mind, we understand it's not easy, but just know that you're not in it by yourself. There are a lot of families struggling with this. Go online, try to find as many resources as possible. DCF has even voluntary services through Beacon Health. Sometimes they can step in and provide even respite care, where the kids may go somewhere for maybe 2 weeks or so and then reintegrate back into the family. So there are resources, there are opportunities for assistance. Do not try to go this on your own. Do not isolate yourself thinking it's just me, I did something wrong. This is happening. And this is something that's prevalent, and it exists, and there are resources to help. So if you need to learn any more information about DCF, please check out our videos, or get in contact with our office. We'll do anything we can to help as much as we can possibly do. Take care.